The government of Malawi has a national energy policy. It's actually being reviewed, but let's look at what are the three main objectives, the three main goals that the government has set in that national energy policy. So the first one is to expand and revitalize the electricity supply industry, more efficient, effective, and financial viable. The second one is the electricity supply industry of Malawi should be able to provide adequate, I'm going to come back to that in a moment, affordable and reliable power supply, which assists in industrialization and transformation of both rural and urban areas, and it helps reduce poverty. And finally, Malawi is an island country as far as the electric power system goes. What does that mean? It means it's not connected with any of its neighboring countries. Our power system is not connected with Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, or any other country in the SADC. So if we have shortage of power in Malawi, we can't import. If we've got surplus of power here, we can't export. Now, let me just talk about these three objectives. Why are we doing it? Why are we talking about it? The fundamental reason is that there are four things that are very interconnected. You take poverty, you take economic prosperity, you take electricity consumption that citizens in this country have, and you take access to electricity. How many are connected to electrical system in Malawi? And they are interconnected. So if we want to reduce poverty, if we want to make this country economically prosperous, our starting point has to be fixing the power system. What do we have at the moment? This graph, which I won't go into a lot of details, but I want to give you the key message. Let me tell you, the lower curve that you see is the sub-Saharan Africa. 15 countries, we are one of them. Access to electricity is the lowest in this region of the world compared to any other part of the world. So average in sub-Saharan Africa, 15 countries, is 22%. Malawi is 9.8%. What does that mean? Only 1 out of 10 citizens in Malawi is connected to electricity. So all the things we've talked about, digital communications and smart devices, so on, 9 people in Malawi cannot access to that. And that we have to change if we want to transform this country. This is a graph which is, represents a lot of countries in this world. And if you are high up on this scale, then your economic production, your income of your people is high. So you can see there, United States, it is right on the top there. South Africa, a country in sub-Saharan Africa, is very high up. And their GDP per capita is very high, and their electricity consumption is very high. Malawi is not on this diagram. We'll show another diagram, but it's really low. Both our economic output is low, our electricity consumption is very low. We got to fix that. And it can be fixed. I'm going to show you in a moment how we will fix it. This is another graph which shows electricity consumption and human development index. Electricity does not affect just the economic output. It affects the health. It affects the education. It affects the well-being of rural and urban Malawi. So if we don't fix electricity consumption, now what is it? Let me tell you some data. In Malawi, an average citizen per year consumes 100 kilowatt hour. Think about how much an average American consumes, 37,000. You know? Even our neighbors, not far from here, South Africa, they consume 14,000. We have 100. You see? We got to fix that. This is show Malawi, 100. I showed you electricity consumption per capita. And even, this is all sub-Saharan Africa. This is not developed world. This is our part of the world. Nigeria, Senegal, Cameroon, all of them are higher. Many of the others are not shown here, South Africa, they're all higher. So to be exact, here is the statistics. 10% of Malawians, to 9.8 to be exact, are connected to electricity. Only 96 kilowatt hour per capita. I told you 37,000 for an average American. You know, New Zealand, which is not as high as American, it is about 25,000. So unless this changes, ladies and gentlemen, this country cannot become prosperous. We cannot reduce poverty. We can't give education to the young woman that we saw in a few presentations ago. We can't connect digitally all our people unless we fix these two parameters. This is also showing economic output is connected with electricity consumption. If you want to start a business, if you want to start a factory, you want to do anything in life, in the modern world today, you need electricity. So unless we fix our power system, we cannot fix our economy. We cannot fix our poverty. That's the fundamental message that we have to take from this talk. So let me show you what is happening in Malawi right now. The government recognizes this. The government and many of our donors, many of our other developed world, the Americans, the British, the Germans, they all recognize that unless we fix this problem, we cannot transform Malawi. It's as simple as that. So we're doing a massive amount of analysis. And the government is saying that 9.8% or 10% connectivity to electricity, which is the data today, has got to go to 30% by 2030 in the next 15 years. I repeat that. The government's objective is we have to fix that 9.8% that is today, it's very low, to 30% by 2030. I have to tell you, even 30% is not high enough. I'll tell you a story about India, where I was born, in a moment. So what do we need to do if we have to go to 30%? I think it's too low, but let's work with that because we don't have a lot of capital. So 30% of Malawi get connected to electricity on grid or off grid by 2030. To do that, our power system, which is 360 megawatt today, has to go to 2550 megawatt. So we are saying about 7-8 times in that period. Our consumption, electricity consumption, which is about 1,500 gigawatt hours today per year, will have to go to about 15,000. So almost 8 times. Can we do it? Yes, we can do it, and we'll show you how. So you can see here, in 2010, 7% of Malawians were connected to electricity from the grid. It's around 9.8 today. We will gradually take it to 14% Malawians connected in 2020, 20% by 2025, around 27 to 30% by 2030. That is the plan we're working on. And what does that mean? Around 100 kilowatt hours consumption today will take it to just under 600 kilowatt hour by 2030. I have to tell you, if we can do that, Malawi becomes one of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa with a middle rank in terms of electricity consumption per capita. We do that, the economic output, which is $270 per person today, will go to around 1,500, about 6 times in real dollar terms by 2030. So electrification affects economic development, it affects poverty level, it affects education, it affects health, it affects the fundamentals of life, both in rural and urban areas. And this is the thing we can transform Malawi by systematic planning. Now, I just want to give you some more data here. So we take the system, power system, from 360 megawatt today to 2550. That's a jump of 2200 megawatt over the next 15, 16 years. How will it happen? About 50% of that will be from coal-fired system. We have a lot of coal in this country. We can use that to produce around 1200 megawatt in the next 15, 16 years. 30% of that will come from hydro. We're doing feasibility right now, and the data indicate that 400 megawatt of new power generation can come from hydro stations that are feasibilities are being continued. 20% from solar. Solar, we got plenty of sun here. It's reliable, and it can be used to help the peak power in the mornings and the evenings. So 200 megawatt can come over the next 15 years, 50% from thermal, 30% from hydro, 20% from solar. What amount of money it will take? It will be $7 billion we'll need to power this program. And of that, almost $4 billion will have to come from the private sector because government doesn't have that kind of money. So we're working on a program to make Malawi attractive so that we can power the energy program, electricity program, from both private sector capital as well as the governmental capital. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a story, personal story about this. I was born in India. When I was 10 years old, I used to walk to school. We didn't have a car. I didn't even have a bicycle. India was poor, poorer than Malawi is today. In a space of 40 years, and at that time, only 30% of Indians were connected to electricity from the grid. It was a poor country. If you had visited India in the 60s and 70s, you'd have said, well, this country has no future. But today, 40 years later, there are a lot of billionaires in US dollar terms in India. There are literally millions of millionaires in India in US dollar terms. The government, today, 70% of Indians are connected to electricity, and the government has recently announced, only 2 weeks ago, that they will connect all of Indians, 100%, to electrical grid by 2019, in 5 years from now. They're going to spend $250 billion in the next 5 years in expanding the capacity of the electrical system. And you will see, not far from now, 10, 15, 20 years, it'll be an economic superpower in this world. So what happened to India in 40 years can happen to Malawi in the next 20, 30 years. This country can be prosperous. Poverty levels can be really low. This country can be transformed because you just have to look at the example of India. And I lived there. It's a real life story for me. So we have to get involved along with our government in transforming this nation to a prosperous, reduced poverty in which every citizen, every child can realize his or her future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.